What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for March 15th, 2021. If this is your first week in review, it's basically just where I take all the official Star Citizen news from the last week, pile it into one video on Monday, and give a general overview of it, as well as inserting my opinions in as well. If you haven't yet, I also do live stream on Twitch every day, but today, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/SaltEMike. So stop by, say hello, say hi. But jumping right into the video, because we have a little bit to get through. It's not too much. Starting out with patch notes updates. I don't have any details that I can give you because I am a member of Evocati, but 3.13 is now in testing in Evocati, so that's pretty exciting. Things are moving forward, and hopefully we have a PTU patch that we can talk about relatively soon. We are going to do something a little bit different in terms of the order in which we do things, because we had a Xeno threat postmortem this week, and it was somewhat interesting, so we're going to go over it. I think a lot of it was pretty obvious, right? So they had a number of different categories in which they wanted to go through what went well, what didn't go well, and what they wanted to change. But in general, the first section, which was the mission, which was the entire event, that's the meat of what we're going to discuss on today's show. So what went well? They said the feedback loop was a pretty well-oiled machine in terms of taking our feedback and getting it to the developers, and the developers iterating on it somewhat. There were some things that they didn't iterate on, but for the most part, when it came to things like PvP being injected into the mission in ways that they didn't want, they kind of adjusted quite quickly. The shared income pool was a really nice touch, actually. The work together nature of the event was really cool. And it's true, like, when it worked, the event also looked really cool as well. So another positive there. Now, this I can't agree with, is the fact that so much money was made was a good thing. I think it made a weird, repeatable kind of exploit for the event. And like the fact that we didn't get an in-game item for completing it, I thought was just made it feel kind of dead and worthless of an event to me. It was like a thing that came and passed rather than a thing I'm always going to remember, right? So that's kind of how it felt for me. So that was actually like something that didn't go well. So for them, this is the what didn't go well section. You know, it legitimately took people off of tasks for Star Citizen to work on this. And we lost progress on future releases for essentially a 1-week event. And what I think they want to do in the future is actually have dedicated teams for events like this, is what they make it seem like. But we'll see. I mean, we know they're working on the Ninetales event. Do they already have a dedicated team for that? I don't think we see that on the roadmap or represented anywhere. So I think for the future, not sure what they intend, but hopefully it is a dedicated team rather than people being pulled off of their jobs. Performance is obviously the worst part of the event, and you know, it's just the worst part of the game in general. And we all know that performance is an issue in this game, and this game's never going to be a reality until the performance gets better, and they're actively working on that, and when they get there, they get there. The meta loadout of Retaliators was also an issue to them. But I think what people failed to realize is that you haven't had a wipe in a year. There's been endless exploits for money in the game. And, oh yeah, you can just buy Retaliators on the website and win the event, basically, which, you know, that is a real thing. So thinking about the fact that there is a meta loadout, yes, that's not the best thing in the world. But the ease in which to get one, once you find out what the meta loadout is actually an overall problem with Star Citizen, in my opinion, kind of big time, right? So for me, like, you would have an event like this and you would hope that the meta loadout would be something that people would have to work towards outside of the event to be able to partake in the event, maybe, I would think. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below about that. I think this just really comes down to I know pay-to-win aspects of Star Citizen. It really does kind of factor in there, as well as just the fact that we haven't had a wipe and we have a lot of money exploits in the game. So even if people aren't purchasing these ships with real money, they are easily able to access them, right? The PvP at the event was kind of a disaster. The event wasn't set up for it. So when people ended up taking part in PvP at the event, it made a bad experience for players to try to complete the event, right? So the idea in a game like Star Citizen would be to have that in mind. So if there was PvP at the event, it wouldn't ruin the overall experience. There would be places where it made sense. There would be places where it doesn't, things like that. So that's something that they felt didn't go well, and I think that's very true and obvious. And what are they going to do to improve? A tiny paragraph saying they are discussing a plan for future events. I mean, like, they made a game their servers cannot handle. And without this magical tech that they've been working on for years now, and is a year or more away, we're not going to see these events realized in the way they want them to. And that's just the reality of Star Citizen, and that's okay. My take on this is like really simple. I hope the positives towards like capital ships and Squadron 42 coming from the event and Star Citizen, by getting these big capital ships in, getting them working, outweighs the delays that the event caused. And it may or may not, but I hope there is long-term positives for getting an event like Xeno in that maybe we'll realize later on that we don't see now. There was a lot more from other teams, but they really do just echo what this main section said. So again, there's a link in the description for the post if you want to check it out yourself, but it really does kind of echo what everyone says here. So now moving on to roadmap updates. We had a roadmap roundup this week because it is the bi-weekly section. So progress tracker changes. Weapon misfire, wear, and overheat were supposed to start towards the end of the year, but they're prioritizing salvage. So these were pushed to 2022, but dude, they're actually prioritizing salvage. I'm confused. This is exciting. So that's like kind of, oh man, like we lost something, but it's not that big of a thing because they're prioritizing salvage, which is pretty awesome. So fuel scooping also is pushed to 2022, so teams can get working on MFDs to not be so kind of like unusable and bad, which is a good thing. I think we probably really need fuel scooping. So like if there was like a priority choice, I almost would choose fuel scoops over the MFDs, but that's one thing I want to hear from you guys below as well, is what's could be more of a priority for you guys. I think fuel scooping will need the MFDs to be good, so might as well just work on the MFDs first as well. But yeah, it's just another example, and we talk about this every week now, of a seemingly simple thing that you would not even recognize, like in a game like Elite Dangerous. Fuel scooping's just in, it's something you do, but it's a monumental thing in Star Citizen that is taking a long time to come in because games are complicated. And we're seeing it made as we go, right? So it's a little bit different. So anti-personnel turrets, this is also gone to 2022. And what these are basically automated guards in landing zones, things like that. So if you do anything that is against the law, that these automated turrets can kind of take you out and enforce laws within landing zones. And that's kind of a big deal because nobody wants armistice zones in the game. They're not realistic. They're weird. So these falling off does have an impact on the future of the game in the next year or so. But again, without a significant performance boost to the servers, would these really work well anyway? So I think pushing them until we have that performance boost probably makes sense. Release view changes. Stanton system polish is committed. Nice. The game continues to look better. So nothing new here. This is no surprise. The Planet Tech and Art teams are always just completing their tasks and doing well. Physical inventory. This is kind of cool because this was feedback I directly gave and had a part in. I thought the name physical inventory wasn't labeled correctly. Because in 3.14, we're not getting physical inventory, we're getting personal inventory, and they actually changed it. So physical inventory is just like a much larger task where we're like taking physical items and putting them on shelves and on hangers, things like that. And that's just not what we're getting in 3.14. So this was kind of cool, and I had a part in this, so it just feels neat. Timed and quantum sensitive missions have been added for delivery missions. So I hope these also come with improved payouts and bring back the joy I had when doing deliveries and planning routes and my smaller ships and things like that. But we'll have to see. Moving on to video updates, we had an ISC, which was, I felt a little bit lackluster. We had a ground vehicle work featurette to start with, and the team is reworking how vehicles move, so let's see how they're doing it.
So right now we're working on a more physically based tire model. It's actually built on empirical data, so like real-world data from tires. So the tire model handles how the wheel contacts to the ground, and so we simulate that actually with this curve that is calculated from the slip of the wheel. Now the slip of the wheel is actually how fast the wheel is turning, how fast the engine turns the wheel relative to the ground that's moving beneath it. The tire model that we're using right now works fine, but it's a little bit too arcadey, and we want to explore moving into a more physical based one.
I mean, this seems nice. I loved racing games when I was younger, and I haven't played them in a while, but I would love to enjoy them within the Star Citizen universe. But I really don't think too many things in Star Citizen should feel arcadey, and they obviously don't as well, so they're trying to do something more realistic when it comes to how vehicles move. So besides it feeling less arcadey, like, what's the reasoning behind the change? There's more to it, basically.
So each of the ground vehicles all are like wildly different ground vehicles, right? Having more flexibility over how you can tune the vehicles, and a more physically accurate way to tune the vehicles, will result in a more believable experience that is easier for us to achieve. And as a result, it's kind of pushed us to improve the system. So the result for the player is that you will see more vehicles that are behaving in the way that you expect. They sort of interact with the terrain much more correctly. You can slide them and also have periods of grip and so on. That is what you expect, and it's easier for us to achieve that, so you will get that more often.
Yeah, at the moment in 3.13, or in 3.12 I should say, all vehicles feel the same, right? Whether you're driving a Rock or an Ursa Rover or a Tumbril Cyclone, other than speeds, they kind of feel exactly the same. They move the same. It's all similar. So creating that variety is always a good thing. And this is something they did with the spaceships, and they're just applying to the vehicles now, which is nice. 2 new vehicles are also making their way into the game, and one looks pretty familiar.
We're also working on the tank at the moment. This has been a big driving force behind a lot of the improvements we're making. So we've got access now to a lot more parameters, and it's the first vehicle to use the track physics which we have. So it's not steering by wheels turning. It's steering by a difference in speed between the different treads. Tech that's come with the tank is just some more fine-tuning options now that we didn't have before, and that drastically improves the feel and also the ability of the ground vehicles to do things as well. We're also working on the new Cyclone MT, which is, kind of made us look at the kind of missile experience that we have with the ground vehicles and how it drastically changes the needs of the missiles and how they aim. It's also basically highlighted the fact that we also need to massively change how we communicate the ground vehicle experience, overall with the UI, because we don't have UI for the ground vehicles right now.
So the tank is finally making it into the game, which is nice. You also got a nice look on the inside and some images that I don't think we've seen before. There's also a new variant of the Cyclone, which I think is actually kind of important, because if you think about ground vehicles, they don't have much to do if they're being attacked by a ship. So the AA perspective, this vehicle is really helpful for at least the Tumbril lineup, because obviously something like the Ballista does have anti-air capabilities, but it's really the only vehicle that does. So applying that to other vehicles just makes sense. We also had a sprint report, and they start out with something pretty simple, a new splash screen for refinery decks. But I wonder if that rock there is foreshadowing maybe how mining will work a little bit more in the future. They show like a dense area of ore within the rock. Also, they updated the mining UI. Now, they really want to display the precise benefit of all the subcomponents, but from what I see is really confusing. The top one shows what the component does. So it gives 15% 15% less inert material, but it makes the beam power minus 10%. While the next line shows 104% instability, which seems quite high, and 92% resistance, also very high, which is trying to communicate actually that it is +4 instability and -8 resistance, and it's doing so poorly. So this is obviously work in progress, so my guess is this is how the backend displays how the information is, and they need to get it in line with the item at the top, or vice versa. However they want to do it, it needs to be uniform, and what they showed wasn't, so it was a little bit confusing. The non-commercial overlays for refinery decks, that was always confusing to me, and we finally kind of learned what that means. They're just dumbing down essentially these stations a little bit to make them look more industrial. I think they just are making them look empty. We'll have to see with what they do with adding some lighting and stuff like that, but in general, they're just large empty rooms that are non-functional. And when I think of a refinery deck or anything industrial, every area is functional, and it's function over form, but an empty room has no function. So I thought that was a little bit weird. Also, lighting circuits are coming to our HABs at some point. I think this is just like a little bit of a test, similar to the fire propagation things we've seen in the past, which is, yeah, they're just trying things out, but this is a really cool little test, to be honest. And next, they want to add replaceable lights. So, yeah, we're going to have to replace burnt out bulbs in Star Citizen. Like, come on, this is getting to be too real. Also, hospitals are making progress. It's coming along nicely. They also seem just massive. I mean, this was like a big part of the sprint report. So, as always, links in the description if you want to see like the full clip. But it's very big, and they did a big walk around of it. But I imagine most of this space is not going to be used by us. It's more just for immersion factor and show. Also, more homestead work. For me, like, if only we spent this much time on what gameplay would happen at these and how that would work, rather than how these look. I don't know, man. The constant updates for me personally are doing less to excite me each time I see them, because I don't know, maybe it's like a bit too much. I don't know what you guys think. I'm like asking for lots of comments down below this time around, but what do you guys think about them? Do they continue to excite you, or are you kind of already like over it? I don't know. It's I have a weird feeling about these for some reason. I think it's just because we know NPCs are just going to use them, and they are going to make the world feel more unique and more immersive, and it's all good, but I think in the end, we all know we really want these ourselves, and we're not going to get them anytime soon, so it's like a bummer. And I say this like every week when we talk about these. Lastly, there was a lighting experiment that was planned to kind of showcase things they want to use in Pyro, but at some point, basically, but it was just like a random goof off by a developer that looked awesome, so they wanted to show it to us, which was pretty cool. And that developer was on the SCL for VFX this week, and there wasn't a ton to talk about here. In general, there was like a few highlights. Clouds for planets and moons are actively being worked on, but rain can't be a thing until we have clouds, so that's why we don't have rain. It was a lot of like, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and nothing was really like actively being worked on. The biggest one for me was when it came to the SDF tech, and the question was with the new shield tech that's coming with SDF, are we going to keep being blinded by our shields during fights? Because if any PvPer knows, it can be incredibly frustrating and actually like taxing on your eyes.
Definitely, I was conscious that the existing effects are just too intrusive on the win, on the cockpit view. So that was 100% at the top of the list for things that we need to improve. So yeah, we've done that. It's going to be, yeah, you're not going to get as annoyed, hopefully, by the impact effects. It's tricky because you got to find a balance, because you still need to acknowledge that it's like that part of the shield is getting hit. We can't just cheat and just not have anything draw, because then from a gameplay point of view, you've lost that readability. So it's just a balancing act that the artist has to strike to make sure that the effects still work from the exterior view and still adhere to all the gameplay requirements there, i.e. changing color to reflect the weakening of the shield. But yeah, I mean, it's one of my pet peeves, if I'm being honest, when especially with testing all the weapon effects, as I was doing a lot last year, getting that shield just covering the screen all the time. Yeah, we're gonna improve that.
I'm glad they heard this feedback and prioritized it the way they have, but he's right. You still need to communicate that you're being hit in your shields, so it is a balancing act on how to do so. So looking forward to seeing what they come up with in 3.13. Moving on to other updates, we had a St. Patrick's Day post, which is really, it's called like something Fortuna. It's really just a reason to sell green stuff now on the website, but what I do hope is to see this event in game at some point in the future where we do things for the event that provide green things. That would be really cool, but for right now, it's an $11 paint for the Star Runner, or a boost up in price for the ship, and a package for the new Cyclone MT, which is pretty cool. There was a Cyclone MT Q&A as well. There was nothing really to add here to it. I think it's all pretty obvious from what we saw in ISC, but they did mention missile operator mode a bit more, that you can choose to either dumbfire or use lock-on with all missiles in the game using this mode, which was kind of cool. We had a sneak peek. This was for the M2, A2, C2 kind of cargo area, and it makes the ship look smaller, I think, than I thought it would be, and I think it's just the angle, so I'm just really looking forward to seeing what the ship looks like inside, getting out flying with it in 3.13 at some point, because I don't think it's planned for the initial release of 3.13, like a 0.1 patch. And lastly, we had a lore post, Sid and Cyrus Part 3. If you guys feel like checking that out, link will be in the description, and that'll do it for today's video. So thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, leave a comment below on anything that we discussed here, if I missed anything, and yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week, and maybe I'll see you on my live stream, twitch.tv/SaltEMike. Have a great one, guys.